Welcome back, everybody, to the sequel to the Husbando Part 2. It is the Waifu Part 2, which I'm sure a lot of the dudes out there are very excited for, watching me get thirsty over some waifus and Blue going deep and analytical and ruining the fun.
I'm sorry that I'm going to ruin the fun for you guys.
But yeah, Blue's back. Hi, Blue.
Hi, I'm here to ruin waifus.
Great, let's do it. We're not going to waste any time rambling on an introduction. You guys have probably seen enough of these already, so let's get right into it. We're going to start with someone who shouldn't really be a waifu since that's technically your character, but you know what? Whatever. It's Byleth. I feel like we already explained Byleth in the last one, and I don't know how much it changes for female Byleth. I feel like she just kind of looks prettier, has more expressions, and, a little bit more quote-unquote personality. But yeah, I don't think I have much to add. Do you have any, Blue?
Not really, though. It's interesting that you do bring that up because even though I think she's, I guess, less attractive than male Byleth, as weird of a comparison as that is, the thing is that she is a lot more expressive than he is, so I don't know if that necessarily bumps her up more, but honestly, I think she'd probably want to stay the same.
Did we have him in boyfriend material last time?
I think we did.
Yeah, I'd feel the same way, to be honest, about female Byleth, so we can just put them in the same tier. Cool. That was quick. Now on to some less quick ones. So anyone who watched my initial Husbando tier list might have noticed a little bit of a mistake up at the very top of S tier, and that's because when we did that one, we did not know that the Flame Emperor was, spoiler alert, Edelgard. So we put him on the Husbando tier list because we assumed his gender, oh no, 2019, triggered, but the Flame Emperor is a she, and the she is Edelgard. And so this is going to be a little bit tough because, and without me going into too much spoiler detail on a video that I'm working tirelessly on to get out to you guys in terms of a script, but I think what we thought Edelgard and the Flame Emperor had the potential to be was not what they ended up as. And I think Blue has a lot of stuff that she wants to talk about in that regard, so I will leave most of this to her. But I will say that I was somewhat disappointed with the direction in which they took both her and the Flame Emperor. Yeah, I'll let you get on a little bit with your analysis, Blue, and I'll chime in, I guess, when I want to.
I know that you said you wanted to keep a lot of the spoilers for your video, but I think it's kind of necessary to talk about them for this. So, okay, I want to get, I guess, the positives.
Spoilers are fine. I'm not going to talk too much about my own personal analysis.
But yeah, so I want to get the positives out of the way first. She has that position of power. Again, I think we brought this up way back when we first did the waifu tier list originally. So that's a plus for people. But most of what Edelgard is, I think, is kind of a problem. I mean, not that she's a badly written character. I think she's very well written for what we got. But there's a lot of things about her that I think kind of keep her from being waifu material, because, I mean, okay, let's look at what she is, really. Like, she's this person who has this agenda that she's trying to push, and I think she's a bit too ambitious about it, and I think the reason for that is because of the fact that she does probably think she's going to die early, because, spoiler, she has 2 crests. I think that was kind of obvious. And I think that's kind of what makes her do what she does, ultimately, because I think that if she didn't have those 2 crests, she would have probably waited a little bit longer, or at least, what's a good way to put this, I guess, she would have still maybe done what she did, I mean, obviously to get rid of the crest system, but I think the reason why she goes to war in the first place is because she thinks she doesn't have enough time to do what she wants to do, which I think ultimately kind of ruins her as a waifu because of that, because she goes through, or she does all these terrible things, arguably. She starts a war, which results in a lot of people's deaths, all because she herself wants to almost be part of what she wants to push, because arguably what she wanted, to get rid of the crest system was going to be, fixed anyways, because there were characters like Hanneman who wanted to change the entire crest system himself by like, you know, doing all those experiments and being able to allow for anyone to have a crest so that they don't have as much power as they do currently. And then you have people outside of her country, like Sylvain, who wanted to change the, like, entire system by convincing nobles that it wasn't really necessary to have people be based around the crests and have more, I guess, merit. Like, especially when you hear a lot of the stuff, like, for instance, people like Dimitri, too, talking about this kind of stuff. But, again, I think Edelgard's issue is mostly just the fact that if she didn't have those two crests to begin with, maybe this wouldn't have happened in the first place. And there's a couple of other things, too, that I think also kind of maybe, I don't want to say ruins her for me, but I think just sets her in a little bit more of a negative light. For instance, the fact that she does outright lie to people at points. I know that might sound a bit kind of weird to some people because they think like, well, like, oh, like she's trying to call out Raya for lying about the church. But in the end, she lies to her own friends, all the people that are working with her. There's a scene, I think a little bit, I don't remember where it was specifically in Crimson Flower, where she's talking to Byleth and Hubert. And what she says is that she knows that the people like who actually were responsible for the Javelins of Light were those who stood in the dark. And she outright says, okay, we have to effectively lie to our teammates about this. We have to tell them that the church is responsible for this, which she ends up doing. So, again, not really a plus for her. Like, she's doing exactly what Raya is doing in the end, so maybe not exactly the best to...
Well, one person is lying for a couple instances, and then the other person's been lying for 1,000 years. So, I mean, without really diving into, like, the nitty-gritty of it, I can totally see where you're coming from. But I suppose, I mean, that's what we look at in terms of a character on a deep analytical level. But I mean, if you look at her sort of more superficial traits as you're just assessing, to me, to be honest, she gains a much more regal and serious look, which is great, don't get me wrong. But it's the look of someone who's, like, too busy for you, you know? If you get what I'm saying. Like, I don't know if she would make a consistent waifu at that position and stature that she's in, like as an emperor and that kind of stuff. So that's one of the things that, you know, for me at least, bumps her down a little bit of a rank. But in addition to that, I actually think that her character development suffers a little bit post time skip at the expense of propping up Byleth. And that's something I did not enjoy at all. Like, I feel like Edelgard there was in a prime position to develop, and she was robbed by two things. One, her route being much shorter than it should have been. That needed at least another 3 or 4 chapters. And then two, just everyone all of a sudden disregarding Edelgard. They make her out to look incompetent, that she doesn't know what she's doing, that she spent 5 years wasting time until Byleth comes back, and all of a sudden now things are good and dandy. Like, that just is like, whoa, really, Intelligent Systems? You're really going to do this to your flagship character? So that kind of... It left a little bit of a bad aftertaste in my mouth, at least.
I think, because I actually kind of wanted to tie this into something that happens a little bit later in her route. That weird, you know, that really weird cutscene where, like, Byleth walks in on her and she's drawing effectively fan art of them?
Yep, yeah.
It seems just so, like, jarring of a character trait, like, for her. It just seems so out of nowhere. And yes, like, the cutesiness can be somewhat consistent in some of the other support conversations, like the Hubert one where she gets kind of like, oh, I want to know, like, who you're interested in, like, all the person that you're saying that you're in love with, and she gets all cutesy there. But I think with Byleth, it's kind of turned up, like, a lot more, because it's almost like a character worship thing, or at least a player worship thing. In the end,
they're trying to push the pairing, as in, like, oh yeah, they want to pair main girl with main guy / main girl.
So that's not necessarily, I guess, just an Edelgard thing. This is a thing that they push for the other routes too, but I think it's especially an issue with Edelgard, because you just have this very different side of her that mostly comes out with Byleth, whereas you have a bit more consistency when it comes to somebody like Dimitri, where, for the most part, like, he still kind of acts the same.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah. Also, I wanted to bring up a couple of other things about her. really weird thing that happens is that the new Yuritsa support that we got, it's kind of weird that she apparently told him that that he should wait until after the war to kill Byleth.
I really didn't want to talk about this because I think we've already had this chat. I think it might have been just a foresight on Intelligent Systems side in terms of writing the support. But go on.
It just seemed really, off to me.
I'll summarize it real quick. Basically, the Yuritsa support says that, with Byleth, says that Edelgard told Yuritsa to kill Byleth after the war. Now, when this was said, how it was delivered is really, really inconsistent. It doesn't make sense considering that Edelgard literally breaks down at the end of her route when Byleth is deemed to be dead. So, I mean, yeah, there is the possibility that she develops a connection along the way, but it is really unclear when she told Yuritsa. Maybe it was, before they took off, before the time skip, but that wouldn't make sense because Yuritsa specifically says after the war, which would mean that she said it sometime between post-time skip and between endgame, and that just feels weird to me given the relationship between Edelgard and Byleth. It just doesn't make sense. And that's kind of why I didn't really want to touch on it, because I'm not convinced. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't think it's necessarily wrong to think that she could have said this before the time skip, because the war had already begun right after Chapter 11. So maybe Chapter 12-ish?
Maybe, I don't know.
It's a bit of a stretch, but...
It's really hard to put a finger on this one, to be honest, completely. So, yeah, I don't know. I think we should rate her, and then we can rate the Flame Emperor separately, because the Flame Emperor just ended up being such a minuscule part of the story in general. It's basically just the mask that I hide behind, or whatever the phrase is in the song. And there was so much more potential for this, sort of double agent role that the Flame Emperor was playing. For memes, I would still put the Flame Emperor in S rank myself, but that's for obvious reasons that I shouldn't have to clarify at this point. But overall, I think the Flame Emperor should have been a more powerful device, and I think Edelgard should have been a more powerful character. Mm-hmm. So where do we stand, I guess, as a final note here?
This is kind of difficult because I don't want to put her in girlfriend material. I really don't. Not that high.
I honestly would probably go with the friends with benefits tier. I'd be fine with that.
Yeah, that
I don't think we go lower
the
than
best,
her. And she's really fallen, although other characters have climbed, so don't worry, we're not going to dock everyone. And yeah, Flame Emperor is going to go in S rank just because I have to at this point. I got to play the memes. I gotta. Yeah. It's Arvis, guys. They put Arvis in 3 houses. Come on.
It really is FE4.
Yep. All right, moving on to the next one is Bernadetta. Bernadetta. I got so much hate last time for putting Bernadetta in invisible tier, even though she is actually always in her room and pretty much invisible all the time. But having played the game, having gone through every single Bernadetta support, having gone through every single Bernadetta monastery conversation, having gone through every single Bernadetta story conversation, I tried my hardest to really, really like this character. And you know what? She's a little bit better than I gave her initial score for. But she's not that much better. Bernadetta is a character that does not develop. Just to keep it plain and simple. And... well, mostly does not develop. There are very few supports in which she does improve, and mostly the improvement is seen in her endings. For example, I think my favorite ending with her is with Raphael, where she really sort of breaks out of her shell. He helps her, just evolve into a more social person who's able to cope with the stress of society and all that kind of stuff. And another support, which I know Blue disagrees with, but I actually really like, is her support with Felix. I think it's interesting. I think it's funny without being cringy. It's just Bernadetta just flails around and knocks aside his sword, and he's like, I don't know what this secret technique is. And I'm just like, this is really odd, but I think it's pretty funny. So she's got a few occasions there, in addition to the fact that during Crimson Flower, she's actually not in her room all the time, which is a little bit better. That shows that she's more comfortable in the Crimson Flower route, maybe. I think at the other ones, she's almost always in her room. So I don't think she's invisible to me anymore. I think she moves up a tier, maybe 2, but that's stretching it. But yeah, Bernadetta fans, please don't kill me. I promise, I'm just saying my opinion here.
So, I know that you're trying to be nice with this one, but when it comes to tier lists like this, I want to be as honest as possible with how I feel about characters. And again, I'm not here to parrot the opinions of the masses. And I don't necessarily want to say I want to allow people to skip my section, and maybe because I'm gonna potentially rip Bernadetta apart here. Well, here's the thing.
Dislikes incoming.
Yeah. Well, I think maybe the issue isn't necessarily Bernadetta herself. The biggest problem with Bernadetta is how she is framed in the story. The fact that you have all of these support conversations where she's screaming and flailing around, and eventually tying this into a very sad backstory where she was abused by her father to become a perfect wife. Why is it that all of these support conversations start off with really silly music? What is IS trying to tell us here? To laugh at the misfortune of somebody, ultimately? Why are we treating this, like all of this, I guess, baggage that Bernadetta has on her, as a joke? Why is it being treated as a joke? Because if you really think about it, when you ask somebody what they think of a support conversation between somebody like Bernadetta and Hubert, is the first thing that comes to mind after they've seen her Viola support, where she talks about her dad and how this is like an abusive thing, and why she starts screaming out because of that abuse, is the first thing that people think of when they see, or they go back to, say, the Hubert support. Oh, I feel so bad for this girl. Look at how she's freaking out talking to this guy because of what her dad did to her. No, that's not what people do. People laugh at it, because it's a joke. So, ultimately, what am I supposed to take from this? Is IS telling me that I'm supposed to laugh at the misfortunes of somebody who's been abused? Or what? And I know that, Link, you were talking about how she grows in certain support conversations. The problem with that is the fact that that growth ends up being undermined if you get a specific ending for her that isn't the one where she grew in. Again, for instance, say that she, had her support conversation with Raphael or Hubert, where in their endings, she ends up becoming less of a recluse. But you end up getting her paired ending with Felix, where she goes full-on recluse, and basically becomes a leech to him by making him do all of her work and this is non-Blue Lions ending, by the way, because in Felix's Blue Lions ending with her, it's a bit different, it's a lot more positive. But in the non-Blue Lions ending with her, she dumps all of her responsibilities on him, which I think is reprehensible for one. And again, the issue is that she had that growth in those other support conversations, but it's officially, it ends up being undermined by what guy she marries in the end. So, her entire growth is dependent on who she marries, as opposed to, all of the support conversations she had along the way for that growth. So, I think, ultimately, Bernadetta is a character who should have, or at least would have worked a lot better in a previous Fire Emblem game, say, Pre-Awakening, because in those games you had the 5 support limit, so this framing issue wouldn't really be a huge deal, and you would see, because in order to get a particular paired ending in those games, they had to have, the max 3 supports, but you weren't allowed to have max supports with other characters, so it would be a lot more consistent in those cases. But since we have this support system, it really works completely out of her favor because of that, because you see growth for her in those A supports, but it is totally undermined in most of her endings. And I think ultimately that is Bernadetta's biggest issue and why I do not care for her as a character.
Yeah. I mean, I agree about the growth problem, and you're right. It is an issue if you don't actually get that ending. Like, I was genuinely surprised about the Raphael one because I wasn't really expecting her to end up with anyone specific, and so when I saw it, I was like, oh. But I'm agreeing that in the other way around, it could have happened where we got sort of a quote unquote bad ending for her, and she ends up a certain way. So it's really difficult for me to place her on a high up list, especially because, like, if I'm thinking about a waifu, do I want someone who's like always yelling and screaming and running away from me when I'm trying to approach them? Like, how am I supposed to waifu you if you're running away from me all the time? Like, hello, get back here.
That's also another issue that I kind of have, though. I kind of want people to, I guess, enlighten me on this, but I don't understand why people want to waifu somebody they consider relatable, per se, because, I mean, using myself as an example, I mentioned in the husbando tier list that I think Felix is really relatable, but, and while I did put him in S rank ASAP, I don't personally husbando him, so I want to know why people want to waifu someone, because that's kind of the reason that a lot of people say that they waifu her, because she's relatable, but, like, would you want to marry somebody who is like yourself, or somebody that's different from you that you can, I guess, or that makes up for what you don't have, I guess? Why is that more of a priority, to have a waifu that's similar to you more than anything? I just want to know. That's it.
Yeah, maybe the comments can let us know. So I guess we need to rank her now because we've been going on about her for like 10 minutes now. So I'm inclined to put her in the friend zone tier and not in invisible anymore, just a little bit higher because we have a little bit more background about her. What do you think?
I think potentially she could be a good friend, but with the proper growth.
All right. Yeah. Okay, that's fair. Okay, moving on to the next one is one that I really liked before release, and I'm not sure how I feel about her now. I'll let you go first on this one, Blue. It's Petra.
Okay, so Petra's kind of an interesting one. I don't have a lot to say about her, but I think she has some really nice qualities about her. I do like the fact that they don't make the miscommunication thing a joke too much. Like, it comes up in a couple support conversations, but it's not her entire character. I like that they didn't make her super gimmicky. A couple things that I really like about her is that she has a very strong work ethic, and she always has that very, like, strong interest in learning about things. And one thing I think that really pushes her up for me is her support with Caspar, where she's very understanding and forgiving of him. Like, she doesn't consider, or she doesn't believe in the whole sins of the father kind of thing. Like, she doesn't blame him for things that her father did to her father, which I think is really nice.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think Petra is a solid character. I don't think she's, like, amazing top tier by any spread of the imagination, but the fact that she has that drive to always continue to work and make sure that Bridget becomes a great country in its own. Like, I know in her support with Edelgard, she goes like, oh yeah, I want to be allied with the Empire, but I also want to create my own very powerful country as well. And, you know, Bridget is my priority and stuff like that. She's also got very interesting supports with both Caspar and Shamir. Shamir's support with her is actually pretty good because they talk about the war, Dagda and Bridget as well, and all of those, like, the racial, I guess you can call them, back and forth with Petra is very interesting. And yeah, like you said, I'm so glad that they didn't make the language thing a big deal in her case. Also, her design post time skip is very unique. It's very colorful, which I like.
So yeah, I like her quite a bit. Like, she's not one of my favorite characters, but I think she has some really nice qualities to her. So I think maybe at the somewhere between girlfriend material and...
I'd probably put her in girlfriend material. Yeah. She's pretty wholesome. Mm-hmm. All right, next one is one that I am personally quite fond of, and that's Dorothea. Dorothea we had in S rank ASAP in the previous video, and to be quite honest, I'm just going to put it out there, I don't think she changes. She's part of one of my favorite supports. If you guys have seen the Best Chips video, you'll know I'm very fond of that support, specifically of her with Ferdinand. her supports with everyone else are also pretty good in general. A lot of it touches on like sort of the her coming from a background of being an orphan or coming from a background of being abused by political people and having to fight through those barriers of being on the same level as those type of people now while being with them in Garreg Mach, but also coming to terms to her own sort of inadequacies that she feels at this moment in time. Also, her post-time skip design looks great. So I don't know. I like Dorothea's supports. I think they're all great. She's got good supports with almost everyone.
Yeah, I don't think my opinion changes much either, coming off of the last video, because there's a lot of really good things about Dorothea. I mentioned before that I have a singing bias, so anyone who is a singer I tend to like a lot more. And she's a very perceptive individual. She seems to know when or what a lot of people think of her, and I think she's kind of realized that over the years, like seeing how people have treated her, like, and how their opinions have changed of her now that she's become a lot more of an influential figure as opposed to just being a regular commoner on the streets. So I think she's learned to understand what people think, like, or she's better at perceiving what other people think. And I like the fact that while, you have that whole her wanting a rich husband thing, like being kind of a gold digger in a sense, like at least she's very honest about it. I can't necessarily
that
fault her
also
on that.
totally drops post time skip. Mm-hmm. Like she eventually grows out of that, which is good. Again, growth, something that I really value.
Yeah, I like that she does learn to see all these great things, and like she doesn't necessarily, I guess, drop her or change her opinion, because she does say even early on pre-time skip that she wants somebody she can at least tolerate. So the personality has always been an important thing to her.
Yep. And another thing that I really like, and this is like a very minor detail that maybe, well, I guess more people are starting to notice it, but her pre-time skip kill quote was all roses have thorns, and then post-time skip it's only thorns left on this rose, which I think is very symbolic of who she is and what she's gone through in general. So, yep, just a little tidbit at the end. She goes all the way to S rank. All right, so that's all the Black Eagles ladies done with, and / Byleth. Now moving on to Blue Lions, we've got Mercedes up next. So I was never initially a fan of Mercedes, and I gotta say I'm still not really too big of a fan on Mercedes. She's got a nice backstory, and I do agree her support with Sylvain is pretty endearing, but for the most part, in general, she feels kind of, like, off and a little bit goofy to me, which is not necessarily a bad thing, but it just doesn't strike me as particularly attractive. Also, I feel like her design went down a notch post-time skip, and I know a lot of people probably agree with me on that one, but I'm going to have my resident Blue Lions expert chime in and chop my head off because I'm criticizing Blue Lions girls.
So I think even, like, I think we put her in S rank last time, right?
Yep.
If I remember correctly. I think I would still want to keep her there because a lot of the qualities that we've learned about her, like, I think are really good qualities for a wife. Because, of course, she has that kind and motherly nature to her, which is always a plus, but I like the fact that she is both a devout follower of a religion, but is also very open-minded to other people's beliefs. Like, for instance, if you watch her do support, she is very interested in, like, the different gods of his religion, or, like, well, they have multiple gods in their religions, and she wants to learn more about it, which I think is really nice. Like, that's kind of what we'd probably want in real life, for people to be much more accepting of what other people believe in. So I think that's very nice that she is a lot more open-minded. And she's also very perceptive as well. Like, as in her Sylvain support, she can tell when he's, I guess, like, when he has an ulterior motive. So, like, she's good at catching things like that as well. And I think the only quote-unquote major downside to her is the fact that she's not really that great at cooking, maybe. I mean, she can make sweets, no. But yeah, like, she's not that great at cooking.
Oh no, triggered, it's 2019. Oh no.
Hey, you know what? It's always a plus to be able to cook, alright? But yeah, I mean, I don't want somebody blowing up my kitchen with spices that are used for smoke bombs, like in her ash support.
That's fair.
But yeah, I think for the most part, I would want to keep her up there, but I know that you don't really think as highly, I guess, of her.
I kind of want to bring her down at least 1 tier.
That's fair. At least within the top 2 tiers, I think she's pretty fit.
I mean, girlfriend material, don't get me wrong, is still a very good tier. I just don't think she... Like, am I really putting her on the same level as Dorothea? Probably not. Is she on the same level as Petra? Yeah, maybe. She's also pretty wholesome. So I think that's pretty fair. All right, next up is Annette, who is another one that I am not like... In general, the Blue Lions girls didn't really do it for me overall. They were just like kind of there. The guys in Blue Lions were a lot more prominent. Annette as well. She's just kind of like this cutesy, girly girl, I guess, for lack of a better description. I don't know what else to say. Like that's pretty much it. She has, I'll give her the fact that she has a little bit of depth in the fact that she really wants to work hard. She worked really hard to get into like the School of Magic, and then she worked hard in there to get into Garreg Mach. All of that in order to try and find her father. And then her supports with him are actually excellent, where she basically says like, why didn't you write to us? Why didn't you reach out to us? You abandoned your family and all that kind of stuff. And she's very forgiving of him. She just says, you know, we want you back in our life, which I think is like awesome. A lot of people get very scarred by their parents or family members ditching them, and they end up harboring great resentment. But to Annette, it's very important for her to keep her family together. And that's something I thought was extremely good. As someone who values family myself, I just thought that was something that popped out to me big time. But yeah, Blue, go for it.
So outside of the singing bias, of course, is always a plus for me. I think that very strong work ethic that she has is a huge plus for her. Like, she's a very smart girl, and the fact that she is so driven to a goal, I think is a really good quality for her to have. Also the fact that I guess you can say that her friendliness translates over into how many support ranks she tends to have with people. Because she has a lot of A+ supports, if you notice. So I kind of see that as this is a very easy person to talk to, somebody that people enjoy talking to a lot. So I think those are pretty great qualities in her. I'm not sure if I would necessarily say waifu material for her. But let's see. Because she would make a really awesome friend, but I don't want to put her that low. That's a bit too much.
No, I'd put her in girlfriend material. She looks great. Also,
yeah, I think
post-time
girlfriend material
design.
works really nicely.
Really nice. Yeah. No, I'm not. I didn't mean to dock her too much.
Yeah.
I'm sorry if I sounded overly negative, but this is just me trying to compare to like the toppest tier. No, she doesn't go in the top tier, but I think she's pretty high up there still.
Yeah.
All right, Ingrid. I personally love Ingrid's ability to banter, as shown in her support with Claude. Like when Ingrid gets it, she gets it, but most of the time she doesn't, and she misses the point. So I'm also not a huge fan of blondes, full disclosure. So maybe that's a little bit why I'm sort of docking Mercedes, and then Annette's not blonde, but she's also a redhead. And then now we've got Ingrid, who's blonde. I'll make exceptions on the occasion, but I guess there's a trend there if you look for it. But yeah, I think Ingrid's post-time skip design, if she had longer hair, I would really dig it. I love the outfit. I like her attitude as well. She's like very loyal, very hardworking, but also can be a little bit overly serious at times. And some of her supports with like the makeup stuff are funny, but you know, it's a little bit odd. Having said that, I can appreciate someone who's like very comfortable in their own skin and doesn't really care too much about what other people think. So Ingrid's a mixed bag for me. Like, I like Ingrid. Personally, I'm a fan. But I just don't know how high I would put her up on my waifu tier list.
Yeah, I'm pretty much in a very similar situation there where I like a lot of things about Ingrid. Again, very similar. I think she's a very driven individual. Like, though it can kind of she might come off as uptight, like, because of just how unwavering she is with her convictions. And sometimes I guess that can translate into her being a bit more stubborn and not necessarily seeing things the way they are, like when she talks to Felix about Glenn, because he kind of accuses her of not really understanding her own fiancé. because she puts him up on this particular pedestal for being a martyr. So I think that also kind of translates into what you were saying before about how she doesn't necessarily get it sometimes, which can kind of be a problem, but for the most part, like, I really do like her quite a bit. I like just how very, like, loyal she is and just how driven she is as an individual.
Yeah, I feel like Ingrid's one of those people who, like, you would go back to with a one-night stand with her, and she'd be like, no, we are having the one-night stand in the morning. Like, no, it's not a one-night stand. She's like, no, we are having it in the morning. Because
one
that's
morning
what I
stand.
believe in. Yeah. And you'll just be like, what's going on? Just like, that's it. That's the final answer. Otherwise, you're gone. I'm like, okay, fine. I could totally see her being like a dominatrix or something.
I don't necessarily see that, but I mean, whatever you say.
Oh, okay. But yeah, I don't know where to put her. I really don't. Like, she hovers.
Yeah, like somewhere between one night stand and friends with benefits.
Yeah. I kind of want to say friends with benefits because I could totally see myself being friends with Ingrid.
Yeah.
Like, wanting to see her more than once because she's pretty chill. So I'll put her there for now. Next up is Lysa Thea, who big fan favorite, big for obvious memes of one-shotting the Death Knight everywhere and all the time. And now that we've gotten those class leaks, it looks like she's going to be able to do her job even better. So we'll have to wait and see. But yeah, Lysa Thea is a pretty complex character in the fact that, like Edelgard, she knows she has 2 crests and that she's running out of time. And so she's really trying to accelerate all of her potential as fast as possible. And that really fits in with, well, one, the skill that they give her in the games, but also to all the growths they've given her. So it just feels like personality and gameplay meet together. And I think that's really neat when those things sort of just mesh perfectly. It makes sense. In terms of like waifu appeal though, I don't know if she really has waifu appeal. She's even post time skip, she still feels a little bit more childish. I enjoyed her support with Edelgard where they talk about like the 2 crests and all that kind of stuff, but it's not really like 100% alluded to. Her support with Linhardt is one of my favorite supports of all time. But again, I don't really see her as like a potential romantic partner specifically, but I can see her as someone blossoming into a relationship further down once she's gotten over most of the baggage, which is why I like her relationship with Linhardt, because they get over things and then in the ending they work through it and that kind of, and then at that point it's like, okay, you with a specific person, home run kind of thing.
So my opinion on Lysa Thea is kind of weird because this is a really weird thing to say, but I think she's really well written as an annoying character, if that makes sense. Like, I think I appreciate her being written so well, but she's still annoying ultimately, but I think that's kind of the point. She's a very precocious child in a sense, the fact that she's basically Edelgard without the power, if you really think about it. Like, they have that same drive to get things done, but they don't have a lot of time because of that shortened lifespan. And when I say childish, I think it's really well written, because there's a tendency for kids to want to prove themselves to adults and seem more adult, but the way that it comes off as immature is the fact that they tend to put other people down in order to make themselves seem a lot better, because Lysa Thea has a tendency to call people out on, I guess, doing dumb things, and she effectively is saying that she's better than them by not doing those things, which I think is very characteristic of a childish person. So, agreed, I don't really think at this point she's waifu material, because she still has growing up to do once she gets those crests removed. So I'm not really sure where I would put her.
I kind of want to say friend-zoned, but I feel like it's a little bit too low because she's a good character. Also, I don't know if I want to put her in the same rank as Bernadetta. She's definitely higher than that. So maybe we have our first sort of one-night stand middling area. And that's not because she's a bad character. It's because she's a better fit with specific people.
Yeah, I think that, especially because she's going to end up dying in most of her endings, I think very specific people would need to be in a relationship for her to make it work out in the end.
She also doesn't survive in most of the endings as well. So that's another thing. It's like, if she doesn't sort this out, she dies. So can she really be your waifu?
Yeah,
Probably
well, not even just
long-term.
that. Like, does she have enough time to grow into the person who could have been a good waifu is the question. And I think it's very specific to certain routes. So unless you're somebody like Linhart, then, tough luck. Yep,
pretty much. Okay, moving on to the last person. Oh no, we're done with Blue Lions. We officially moved into Golden Deer, and I forgot to do that segue with Lysa Thea. Whoops, my bad. Second girl in Golden Deer, and this is someone I had knocked down quite a bit. I forgot where we put her last time. Do you remember?
Wait, which one are we doing first?
Was Maryann friend-zoned last time?
No, I don't remember.
I feel like she might have been.
I'm not sure where we put her, honestly. I don't remember.
Well, it was definitely much lower than I'm gonna put her right now, and I gotta say, Maryann nails it in every way, shape, and form. If you want a character who accepts their flaws and is, in the end, accepted for who they are, she does that. If you want a character who accepts their flaws and works very hard to get past them and grow in every single way humanly possible, she does that too. Maryann's just a fantastically written character. There's no other way to really say this. I was absolutely floored by Maryann's supports. Just every single one of them is absolute gold. Every single relationship she forms with someone has meaning. Every single one of them has depth and exploration for her character specifically. Every single one of them has depth and growth for the person in front of her as well. We've done, obviously, the top 10 ships. We have her support with Lauren's up there. What an excellent, excellent support. And then in a bunch of her other supports, she also grows exponentially. So, yeah, Maryann to me is just an S tier, not just waifu, just an S rank person in general.
Yeah, I pretty much have to agree with that. I think Maryann is what Bernadetta should have been, in a sense, when it comes to supports, because within this support system, because of the fact that you can have growth with all these characters, I think it's kind of important for all of her endings to showcase that growth and not have just a complete 180 and back to how things used to be before the growth. So, yeah, like, Maryann has a lot of great things going for her, and while she does start off as somebody who doesn't really see herself in a great light, she grows to learn to love herself as more people come up to her and tell her how great she is, because there's a lot of really good things about her. She's very kind, very selfless, even if it is to keep others away from her, because there's a support conversation for one where she tells somebody that I don't remember, it was the Claude support, I don't remember which one it was. There's a support conversation that she has with somebody where she wants them to stay away from her because she thinks that they'll be cursed if she picks up a vegetable or something. I don't remember which one it was. I don't know if you remember, Link.
I feel like that sounds like the Raphael support, but it could have been anyone. Really.
I don't remember who it was, but she's selfless in a sense that she doesn't want people to be cursed because of her, even if in the end that's not really what was going to happen. It's proven that wasn't the case, but I like the fact that she is selfless enough to think that even if it wasn't true, she wanted to protect other people from herself. And the fact that, she's a very devout individual, she's pretty much all around a great person.
Yeah, she's also very humble, very loyal, etc., etc., so off to S rank you go. Okay, next up is Hilda, and Hilda's also a mixed bag, but I like Hilda because she's got personality. She's one of those characters that kind of grew on me along the way. The more I played the game, the more I started to like Hilda. Her design is also awesome. I think the post-time skip style just looks good. She just rocks it. The way she carries herself, with that. And she also acts like a very goofy character, her tandem with Claude back and forth, kind of chipper attitude sort of thing. I dig it. I like it. But otherwise, I don't really have too many opinions on Hilda. I think she's just got some solid supports overall. I think she's a pretty good character.
Hilda's kind of in a weird situation. She's kind of similar to Lysa Thea to me in that they're both well written, but with a bad quality to them. Because I don't think you're supposed to necessarily like Hilda at first, because she is pretty manipulative in getting other people to do things for her. And I know that the explanation for that was that she kind of tends to overthink, like, what people will think of her, like, the fact that people might expect for her to essentially be perfect and be able to do things well enough, and she thinks that she'll let them down in the end. And I think the biggest problem with that is the fact that I don't know if this is just a voice acting issue, but it doesn't really sound sincere to me. Even though I think that it's supposed to be sincere. I don't know, like, it just comes off as very shallow and just not, like, it doesn't come off as something that she would naturally say. Maybe it's better in the Japanese version, I don't know.
I'm not sure, to be honest. I haven't heard her Japanese version, but I mean, I wouldn't put her too high, but I would definitely at least consider putting her in the Friends with Benefits tier.
I don't know if I necessarily be friends with her at first, just because of the fact that she does make other people do things for her.
Right, but we're also talking post-time skip here, so we gotta factor that in too.
I'm not really sure what I want to do. Somewhere between One Night Stand and Friends with Benefits.
Alright, well, we'll put her with Friends with Benefits then. We'll give her the benefit of the doubt. Okay, so now we've got our last Golden Deer member, and that is Leonie. We gave Leonie, I think it was a one-night stand rank. We didn't really rank her very high last time just because she felt kind of boring in general. But I think my opinion on Leonie is also one that has changed very much, like most of the other characters on this list. I don't know how much it's changed, though. Like, Leonie has a very complex inner problem, to say the least, of the whole nobility versus the commoners, one that's very fleshed out in her Lauren support, which I really like. And then she's got a support with Shamir, where she sort of gets over her fear of spiders, which is kind of funny. And her ending with Shamir is actually great, where she is protecting someone, I think it's a noble, and Shamir sends her a note with like the mark of a spider on it and as like a warning or something. I think that's how it is. And Leonie kind of like, oh, okay, I get it now. And she kind of joins forces with Shamir. So she's got some pretty cool supports. There's also the support with Claude, where he feels comfortable enough around her to talk about how he doesn't necessarily believe in the goddess and in the religion, because he knows that she also probably doesn't believe in it as well. But aside from that, it is a little bit jarring that everything in the story has her obsessing over Geralt, even though her supports give her a lot more credit than that, which I feel like is something I definitely need to put out there, because a lot of people discredit her for that.
Honestly, I don't think the Geralt obsession is that big of an issue. I didn't really notice it that much, weirdly enough. I mean, maybe in some cutscenes, like, honestly, I didn't really see it a lot in her supports. I don't know if it's just I didn't see it.
It's in a lot of the monastery conversations,
yeah, like, I think
whenever you go to talk to her.
Yeah, that's probably why. Like, it doesn't really come up in a lot of the bigger conversations is the thing. So I didn't personally take issue with it. So that's not really something that, I guess, docks points from her. I think she has a lot of really good qualities to her. The fact that she is a very practical individual, very frugal with her money, and the fact that she's able to come up with a bunch of ways to reuse things, I think, is pretty great. She's a very hardworking individual. The fact that she does want to repay her village eventually for sending her to the monastery. And she has a very strong competitive streak, as we've seen in her Felix support. Though I think the one big, I guess, negative to her is the fact that there's kind of this sort of running gag that she doesn't pay people for stuff sometimes, like in her Raphael ending, where she racks up a debt at his bar and just never pays him back.
She does that in most of her endings. She basically becomes Geralt 2.0 and becomes a drunkard and never is able to pay off her tabs. Which is kind of like, whatever, Leonie. Like, come on.
Which, I mean, would you want your waifu to end up doing that? Like, just racking up a debt?
Nope, not at all. So that's why I wouldn't even put her in the girlfriend material tier. I would probably go, again, somewhere between One Night Stand and Friends with Benefits. I'm not too sure.
You know, I would be friends with her, like, at the very least, because of the fact that she does have those really nice qualities to her. The fact that Like, she does have all those she can give you tips on how to save and reuse things. I think that's pretty nice.
Okay, friends with benefits it is then. Cool. So next up, we're getting into sort of the Church of Saros, Knights of Saros, kind of Saros-involved people, I guess we can say, tier/Saros herself eventually. And yeah, first up is Flayn, who becomes a student and joins you, but plot twist, we now know Flayn is probably like 1,000 years old, but she looks like a little girl. I guess that's a common occurrence in Fire Emblem. But yeah, Flayn is, for those who don't know, Saint Cethlean. So one of the old dragons who can no longer transform. And yeah, I don't know. Her support with Linhardt is pretty interesting, where he like describes who she is and she's trying to deny it. But other than that, I actually have not gotten all of Flayn's supports yet, so I'm not entirely sure what to think of her. I'm not a big fan though. I would probably go like pretty low tier on Flayn, like either friend zoned or something like that.
Flayn has a couple of good qualities to her. Like, she's a very polite individual for the most part, and she does tend to be the pacifist a lot of the time, like in her support conversation where she tells him, like, oh, I would like to essentially see a world in which you are able to cut fruit and not people, which is, well, it's funny, but also really nice. But a couple of things not in her favor is that she's not really great at keeping pretty important secrets. The fact that she makes it kind of obvious that she's not the same mage as everyone else, I think that's pretty clear in a lot of her conversations with people. She's a bit too curious for her own good as well. The fact that she goes off in certain places and then ends up getting into trouble, like with the Death Knight. And then, of course, the fact that she's not good at cooking. She's quite the destructive individual in the kitchen, and only people like Dimitri, who can't even taste food, like her food.
Oh yeah, that was pretty good. Oh yeah, her Ferdinand support is also hilarious. The hugging one, and where she tells him like stay. Or wait, is that Sylvain?
I don't remember.
I'm getting them mixed up. No, Ferdinand is definitely the hugging one.
Yeah, like
and
Sylvain's was the one where like she takes that whole thing that Sedith says literally to her about to stay like far away from him. She actually tries to physically stay far away from Sylvain. Which is also kind of a problem too, the fact that Sedith is not going to make it easier for you if you want to be in a relationship with her.
Yeah.
So, also the long lifespan is kind of an issue too.
Yep.
So, I think she's at least a good friend. Probably. I don't think Sedith would be appreciative if you had a one-night stand with her at any point. So, I would say friend zoned.
I guess the friend zone tier unless you want to get impaled by Sedith's lance. Okay. Next up is Manuela, who goes into the same tier as every single one of her relationships, one night stand, and we can make that plain.
I mean, you know, I wouldn't disagree with you. She has a couple of problems to her. I mean, of course, despite my seeing bias, again, she's a very talented individual. She's a doctor, she's a teacher, and she's also a songstress, so a lot of things
she can use the warp staff.
Yes, she can use the warp staff. She has a lot of, I guess, talents. Like, she's very multi-talented in general. But at the same time, she's very messy, very crude, and she does get drunk quite often, which is a
She's
problem.
kind of a wreck.
So, yeah, she's kind of a mess.
Just overall a wreck.
Ultimately. So, even despite all of those really nice talents that she has, she, like, personality-wise, is kind of a bit difficult to handle.
Yep.
So, yeah, I think once she very much, like, especially because, like, even looking at her buy-list support, she, I guess, effectively has one-night stands with a bunch of guys. It's kind of in her nature.
Guys, we didn't even know about what Manuela was going to be when we made these tiers, and, like, surprise, surprise, she literally is the definition of the one-night stand tier. What can I say? All right, let's move on to Kathryn. Kathryn's pretty cool. She's like this badass woman soldier with a inherent brave sword that you can get right from the beginning of the game. She just absolutely wrecks with it, and she continues to wreck with it all the way until the end game. She's got great growth. She's got great base stats. She's got a great class, and her personality is pretty boss. She does feel a little bit crude at times, and her obsession with Raya feels a little bit over exaggerated, but like we see in her support with a character that I am very fond of personally, Shamir, she can eventually break that down and get to the depths of actually caring about other people and showing how much she does value sort of her partnership and her loyalty and her companionship. But I know you have a little bit more to say about that, Blue.
Well, not necessarily a lot. Like, I think more, like, I agree with you for the most part, other than the fact that I think, well, not really other than the fact, but I want to go, I guess, a little bit more into the fact that she has that tendency to make excuses for the church. Like, especially in her Ash support, when she's talking to him about that, like, she says, you know, like, we did what we had to do, like, and kind of, I guess, quote-unquote lie in a sense about how somebody like Kristoff was responsible for something, because, you know, they basically didn't tell people that he was out to go and kill Raya. Like, there was an assassination attempt. They didn't want people to know about this, so they lied about it. So the fact that she does, I guess, make excuses in the end for the church is a detriment to her, but for the most part, I think she does have really nice qualities to her. The fact that she's a very devout individual. Like, she's very much willing to repay the debt that Raya, or like her debt to Raya for saving her. And the fact that she is a very strong and tough individual. And the fact that she was able to work herself back up the ranks. Because she used to be a noble, but then, of course, a couple things happened and she was on the run from, like, people in Fargus. And she ended up working herself all the way back up to an individual that people respected. As Thunder Kathryn.
Thunderstrike Cassandra.
So...
so I don't know where we put her. I'm kind of like in between girlfriend material and friends with benefits.
I think she's more friends with benefits, honestly.
Yeah, probably. I would agree there. Ooh, okay. Next up, moving to my least favorite character in the... my favorite character in the game is just throwing people off there, seeing if people are paying attention. Guys, do I really have to explain this? I mean, just look at her. Just look at her. Just like one glance into those beautiful, amazing eyes. And that like kick-ass, badass looking outfit. And like, really, do I have to explain this? Like, this character just goes up to S rank and then leapfrogs over the Flame Emperor to the top of the list. And that's it. It's just like, it's fact. Fact.
S tier for Shamir tier.
Exactly. S tier, you know, Shamir's name starts with S. That's all you need to know. In all seriousness, though, I will do a little bit of an analysis. I'm being a little bit inspired by a video that Nux Taku made about women in anime. And one of the scenes that he uses to describe it is a scene from Cowboy Bebop where Spike Spiegel says, "I love a woman who can kick my ass." And to be honest, that resonates with me so much because Shamir falls under that as this female character who is an absolute boss in every single way. And she can totally kick your ass if she wants to, but she doesn't. She carries herself in a very elegant and professional manner, and she's always willing to help and teach and coach people who are lower than her to elevate their standards and push them up. For example, in her support with Raphael, she teaches him how to walk softly. Guys, Raphael walks softly. Let's be real here. Only someone who's insanely talented can teach that lummox of a man to walk softly. In her support with Leonie, she teaches her to get over her fear of spiders. In her support with Claude, she teaches him how to be more vigilant and attentive to detail. Like, there's always an element of teaching in one of her supports. And then there's her support with Hubert, which is like, they're both trying to, you know, shoulder check the other person, catch them off guard, where Hubert kind of threatens her, and then she snaps back and she's like, careful who you're messing with, sort of thing. Like, she's not messing around. Most people would kind of like, oh god, Hubert, scary man, I'm gonna retreat, leave. And then obviously her ending with him. Like, if you're not gonna get an S support with Shamir, you gotta get her ending with Hubert. That ending is gold. It's literally like Bonnie and Clyde. It's like you can imagine them both back to back, just assassinating, taking out all their enemies one by one, just like fighting to the death together. It's great. It's amazing. I love it. I love everything about Shamir. I don't think she has any negative qualities, and if you do, you're wrong!
What do I even say after that? Nothing I say is gonna change your opinion, just like last time.
No, but you're entitled to have an opinion, even if it's wrong.
Okay, no, I'm not gonna say like too much. Like, I'm not gonna say anything really bad about her. Like, I like the fact that she's very blunt but honest, and the fact that, despite like the fact that she doesn't really care for the religion, she still is, I guess, I don't want to say generally loyal to Raya, but she knows that she has to repay a debt to somebody who did help her, and despite being very straightforward, she does have her somewhat emotional, I guess, moments, like the Violet's as support, where, you know, she gets a little bit blushy at the end, so yeah, I don't really have much to say about her, other than that.
That S support is pretty damn good, because she also shows that she's not afraid to admit her insecurities and talk about them as well, but she's powerful enough to work through them. Man, come on, why can I not just have IRL Shamir? It just makes me sad. I'm gonna move on before I start crying.
Have you ever seen someone so beautiful that you started crying?
I'm not gonna answer that. Next up, we have Raya / Saros. Now, I think Saros is smoking hot. Like, that is an awesome look for her. I think the Raya look is a little bit of a downgrade. But honestly, we need to have a tier here that's literally called like the hips don't lie tier, and we could just put Raya there because that's all the rage these days. That's the memes. And we could just put her there and be over and done with it because, like, I don't know. Raya's pretty good looking, but that's there's some crazy in there, guys. There's some, and I do not like crazy. I do not. And the fact that she could just, you know, she gets pissed off one day, turns into a dragon, bites your head off, and you're gone for good. Like, I don't know, man. Like, I would tread carefully there. Aside from the fact that she doesn't have any supports except with Byleth, she's not a very deep character in general, but she's got a lot of plot development. Also, quote-unquote, personalities. And, yeah, I don't know. I think she looks better as Saros, and I'll leave it at that, and I'll let Blue take over from here.
I would have to disagree about her not being, I guess, that developed, but I'll get there eventually. But first I want to address the elephant in the room. This is an incest support. The fact that she is in fact related to Byleth in a way. She's kind of her grandmother, which is not really that great, ultimately. So, yeah, but aside from that, I'm always seeing people talking about how they think that Raya is just this very evil individual, or just kind of defined by how crazy she is, and I would have to disagree with that, because I think she is ultimately a parallel to Edelgard in a sense. They're very similar characters in that they have good intentions, but they go about things the wrong way. And there's a lot of good qualities to Raya that I think a lot of people overlook a lot of the time. The fact that she is very motherly and caring to other people. She goes out of her way to make people feel comfortable. Like, for instance, that one side quest where she gives those little herbs or whatever to the students who aren't really feeling well. I mean, I guess the drugs joke or whatever. Giving students weed. But yeah, like, she also helps those in need, like Cyril, Kathryn, and Shamir. And I know that a lot of people are going to say that she is intolerant of people who don't believe in the church, but I don't think that's the case. Because she hired somebody like Shamir, and there's also Cyril as well, who is an Almiran, and they themselves aren't exactly devout, but she still cares for them, and is, I guess, very patient with both of them, even though they aren't people who necessarily agree with the teachings of the church. What I think is that ultimately she hates people who try to harm her or cause damage to their church, which is why a lot of the times when you see her saying, like, you know, like, let's go and fight off the people from the Western churches, because those people instigated, I guess, a conflict with the main church. And then, of course, people like Edelgard, who started a war against the church. So I think ultimately her issue is with people who try to start conflict with them, not so much people who disagree, generally. Because we've seen how she treats certain characters like Cyril and Shamir. Like, she treats them a lot nicer, despite them not believing in the teachings. So, I think the only real issues with her is the fact that she is insane. But there is obviously a reason for it. Like, all the grief that she's had to go through over the years, and she's lived for a very long time and had to deal with that grief for so long. And she does lie for the sake of the church. But in the end, I think, again, this is very much parallel to Edelgard, ultimately. And the fact that she does eventually renounce her claim as the Archbishop to Byleth, and in her S support, despite the fact that you have to get the S support to see this conversation, that she realizes her mistake in the end. And she wants to change for the better, ultimately. So I don't think she's inherently a bad person.
Yeah, I mean, most of the characters in this game are morally gray, so it is fitting that Raya is morally gray, and a lot of people either love or hate her, and I guess that's it. That's what it is with morally gray characters. Same can be said about Edelgard. But in terms of ranking her on our tier list, I have no idea where I put this woman.
I have no idea either, because, again, it's an incest support, so I don't know.
I mean, I would totally give Saros at least a one-night stand.
I'll give you that.
So I guess maybe they both go there. Although we do need that hips don't lie to. So.
You can add it if you want.
Yep. Next up is Sothis. And I don't think Sothis really changed from our last analysis, to be honest. She is kind of just there and pretty underwhelming in general. So and then you want to make she's literally invisible.
Yes,
joke
I was
again?
about to say, am I allowed to make my literally
stole your
invisible
thunder.
joke again? That's such a bad joke.
Yeah. So I think she just stays in the invisible tier. I don't think I have much more to say about her.
I mean, on top of the fact that it's another incest support, that's kind of a problem.
I guess so. That's true. Oh, God. I'm about to open a can of worms here, but we've got Monica and Crania up next. And, like, if anyone is going to win the award for probably, like, biggest plot device / worst character in the entire game, it's either Monica and Crania or the next one on the list, Cornelia. Like, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry that our female, those who slither in the dark in the dark in general, just terribly developed characters. But, like, Crania's entire existence is literally kill Geralt and then get sacrificed. That's all she does. She does nothing else. There's, I would have liked to see some back and forth between her and other students. Like, she just kind of exists in the monastery for a couple chapters, turns into Crania, kills Geralt, next chapter she dies. There's no substance there. There's nothing to like there. There's nothing to, but I don't think there's even anything to dislike there. She just exists.
So I guess it's just,
I kind of want to.
Yeah, it's ultimately, I guess, about her looks, maybe, because there's really nothing else to go off of, because we don't really know the real Monica. Same goes for the next character, Cornelia, because the implication is that these people died at some point and were replaced by people from those who slither in the dark, so we ultimately don't know anything about her, or the real her.
They just kind of exist to be evil, and, like, just cleavage in general. That's it.
So yeah, it's just kind of down to the looks. So I guess, like, if you find her attractive, one night stand, but if not, somewhere else down.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, I'd put Monica in Invisible. Then I think, like, Crania and Cornelia maybe can go into one night stand here just because of their looks, but I'm not that convinced.
I know that maybe some people might want to at least give Cornelia, or at least maybe some people will think, like, well, Cornelia helped, like, save people and get rid of the plague, but maybe that was the real Cornelia, not this one. This was a completely different person who replaced her.
Again, it just brings up the point that you were talking about before, is, like, we don't know when they were replaced. Mm-hmm. I don't know what to do with Crania. I put Cornelia in one night stand. I have no idea where Crania goes.
Anyway, either one night stand or invisible, not even friend zoned.
I'm just gonna put her in invisible. I'm not a fan at all. Okay, I guess we're getting into the quick rounds here. We're almost done. The next 4 that are remaining on the list should be pretty quick. Anna has, like, 0 character. She shows up in Petra and Ash's support. She's just kind of like the trademark Fire Emblem mascot, if you will. I would definitely be friends with Anna. She's pretty funny. She's pretty cool. It seems like she might have some actual relevance in Abyss mode, though, which she talks about. So I wonder if we'll get some more development on her there, and I'm really hoping for at least some supports there. It sucks that she got added to the game with no supports. So other than that, she's just kind of our shopkeeper. Everyone loves Anna for the most part. I would definitely put her at least in the friend zone tier, but maybe friends with benefits as well. She seems chill.
Friends with benefits because you can get all those sweet and juicy deals.
Oh, that's very true. That is very true. I didn't think of that. Okay, sold.
Yeah, I really don't have much to say about Anna. There's no supports, and yeah, we don't have much to say about her. She shows up in other people's supports just to kind of be there.
Yep. Judith, on the other hand, who's next, I am very fond of Judith. I really like Judith's character. Another really badass female character that we have who is able to rein in Claude. Like, that's impressive. If you are able to control Claude and be like, listen here, boy, you're going to do this, you're going to do that, and this is why. She's also not bad as a combat unit. I was really hoping that she would be recruitable. Like, this is someone who really should have been like a late game recruit added to the army and like had some supports and more development as well. I would love to know more about Judith. Aside from the fact that she looks great and she just carries herself in like a very dignified manner, like she's just a boss in general. So I would at least go, girlfriend material. I would even go S rank for me, at least personally.
So the only problem with that is the fact that she has a thing for Nadir, so kind of probably gotta be somebody of equal standing of her to catch her attention.
What are you saying? I'm not a pick up?
I mean, are you Link the Undefeated?
I'm undefeated in many different ways, Blue.
But is it with things that Judith would find valuable in a man? That's the question.
I suppose she's just gonna have to come and find out.
Oh my.
Yeah, I don't know. I would at least put her in girlfriend material, at the very least.
Yeah, I'll go with girlfriend material.
All right. She's cool, guys. Come on. I like Judith. All right, next up is Fleisch, who is pretty much a plot device. She literally serves the purpose of killing Rodrigue to flip Dimitri's personality back into good boy Dimitri, and that's it. So I think she kind of reminds me of Flame, actually, so I think she goes like right into the friend zone tier, maybe even invisible.
Honestly, I wouldn't put her in invisible, and the reason why is because if you look at Crimson Flower, she does kind of show up in the monastery a bit, and you can kind of tell that like she is kind of a more responsible individual. Like when talking about her brother, like she kind of picks up for like all the things that he can't do and kind of admonishes him for things like if he does something wrong. But yeah, like I guess she has those qualities to her, like which could potentially be good if she is on your side, but obviously like she's a plot device in Blue Lions. So I think
she's also very young, and I work in the same building as the FBI, so we're gonna leave it at friend zone and just
yeah,
call
let's
it a day.
put in friends, and I think she's better than Cronia, honestly.
Oh yeah, totally. All right, and the last one on the list is Lada Slava, who I was actually heartbroken that I lost in Crimson Flower. Like I was getting attached to Randolph and Lada Slava. Why did they have to take them from me? They were my generals. I liked them. I wish that, again, these are people I wish were recruitable. Why could we not get these characters? Come on. The only issue I have with the deaths of Randolph and Lada Slava, it's just like, oh, they died. Oh, that's a shame. Oh, too bad. And like you get a little bit of a conversation, and that's it. It's like you don't get like I wish Edelgard was like super emotionally attached to them. There was some backstory about how she was friends with them when they were younger. Just like a little bit more interaction here with these characters, but I mean, Lada Slava at least gets to go into One Night Stand. She's all right looking. She's general in the army.
Yeah, I think she's a pretty good looking person.
If Cornelia,
but again, we don't really know much about her.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And I think that's it, unless you have any other things you want to say.
Not really, other than I just want that answer about people waifuing Bernadetta. Please explain. I really need answers.
Yeah, or in general, just let us know who your first S-rank person in Three Houses was and why, I suppose. And yeah, if you enjoyed the video, leave a like. It helps spread my propaganda and my opinions, which I appreciate. And if you guys share that, that would be awesome. And then like maybe subscribe, maybe, because we've got more videos that are coming out that are pretty good. And yeah, thanks, Blue, for accompanying me across this 4-part series of rating waifus and husbandos. I wouldn't have done it unless you had forced me to do it, so this was fun.
I mean, I had a lot of fun, and I hope you did too.
Yeah, it was a good exercise in quick, sort of, well, quote-unquote quick character analysis before we really dive into the deep end on it, at least in my end. So yeah, I guess I'm kind of rambling here now. Thanks everyone for watching, and I will see you guys in the next video pretty soon. Peace.